everybody, this is the Vikran. So, Brian Henson decided that he was going to strike out on his own and also want to entertain people with puppets. But he thought to himself, I'm not going to let the fact that I am Jim Henson's son, decide what I'm going to do with my life. I am going to be basically the cinema version of a shock jock. I'm going to do a movie that will shock people. And people might say, well, what are you going to do with it? Well, I'm going to show them that I am going to take risks with movies about puppets. That sounds great, they said, but what is the movie going to be about? It doesn't matter. I'm just going to have to shock them, and they're going to flock to the cinemas to see this one. When Happytime Murders trailer hit and I saw it, I said to myself, wow, this is going to be bowling shoe ugly, as good old JR would say. I will, however, say that it is not quite as atrociously bad as that. It's still not very good. And there is a good idea here, but it's not fully realized, and they have been unable to hide the weaknesses and enhance the strengths of this thing. They have basically done the opposite in most cases, but we're getting a little bit too far ahead of ourselves. Let's find out together if this is a movie that you think that you will like. This is the Happytime Murders. It's a little bit sad that we have scrapped the idea of having trailers that begins with "in a world", because few movies would have fit the bill better than this movie, because, in a world where puppets live alongside humans is basically the, pitch for this movie. The puppets in this movie is essentially, half the size of the regular human, and they are sort of kind of treated like second-class citizens. It's not quite, an apartheid system, because we don't want to, get this movie too dark and too depressing. We have to, make them just a little bit oppressed. The thing is that we're having a private investigator. He's a puppet who was once the first police puppet, but he was fired after, a thing went horribly wrong. And a bit of a bust-up with his old partner, Melissa McCarthy. But I'm sure that they will not have to, work together in any way, shape or form. Oh wait, no, I'm wrong. So we have the classical mysterious woman that enters his office, and she says to him that I'm being blackmailed and I need an investigator who can figure out what is going on here, and he takes the case, and everything seems to be going quite normal until he ends up in a big shootout, and lots of puppets have been killed in the same process. And one of the cops that ends up in the same place as this shooting took place is, of course, Melissa McCarthy, and after they have been bickering with each other a bit, they of course gonna have to work together to solve this case, because apparently somebody is killing puppets, and they seem to be targeting the Happytime Gang. The Happytime Gang was, this TV show from the 1990s, and they're being picked off one by one. Maybe this has to do something with, the killing of Bubbly Pants, this porn-addicted, raving lunatic of a rabbit. Maybe that has something to do with it, but this is also personal to our good friend Police Puppet, because his brother has been killed. Are all these things connected somehow to this mysterious woman and the guy who is blackmailing her? We shall see. So right from the start, this is about us, Formula A1 when it comes to, body cop movies. But it's just the fact that we're going to be shocked because puppets are getting laid, they're doing drugs, and they swear a lot. But after the shock factor has worn off, which it does fairly quickly, to be honest, there isn't that much left here, because it is just a standard Melissa McCarthy movie where, she does her Melissa McCarthy things, and if you like that, you will probably like this movie a lot. I think that the idea of having puppets interact with the humans in this way is kind of clever, and there are moments in this movie that really works, and there are jokes that actually land precisely where it's supposed to land, and some of the characters are a bit funny, but this is just such an incredibly predictable movie. Are they gonna, you know, learn something from each other? Is he going to be reinstated in the police force? Are these cases actually connected, and is it somehow connected to, you know, an old case that, you know, he has been trying to solve for all these years? Of course you know all the answer to this thing. I knew what was going to happen in this movie, and I never can figure out, you know, what is going to happen in any movie. So it is a lot of gross humor, and there is a lot of classical gags that you would, you know, find in these types of movies. There is a lot of jokes. It just lands very flat. The ejaculation sequence is just one of these things that sounds fun on paper, but it's just awkward, and it's just, can we move on, please? So you can pretty much see this movie inside of your head, and you will see exactly where this one is going. You know, you want, you know, shootouts with puppets, you want puppets having sex with each other, you want them to swear, you're gonna get all of that. However, they, for some reason, when they go to the strip club, do not have the girls take off their clothes for some reason. What? You already have so much rated R stuff. What is a couple of tits going to do? I want tits. I mean, these puppet things are simply not just doing it for me at this point. It is, however, a very fast-paced movie, and things are moving in such a brisk pace that you will sometimes forget how mundane and, you know, boring the script is, because stuff is happening all the time, because they're trying to cover up the fact that they don't have that much new to say. They're just trying to, you know, involve puppets in the whole thing, and think that, well, that's gonna be enough for you. It's not enough for me, but it was not quite as atrociously awful as I thought it was going to be. But there isn't a cliche that they will miss to give us, and the banter between Melissa McCarthy and the puppets are not very good. And she is very obnoxious in this movie. This is, you know, the opposite of what happened in the movie The Heat that I reviewed a couple of weeks ago. Here Melissa McCarthy is very, very alone here, and she can't really do that much with these puppets, and the puppets aren't that interesting either. And I don't really like, you know, the main puppet, which I have forgotten what his name is, and I don't know who, you know, played him, and I don't really care that much about it. So it's not a movie that will leave a great impact on you. I like the idea, but this feels like, you know, the love child of Bright, Meet the Feebles, and Who Framed Roger Rabbit. But do you know why Roger Rabbit worked so well? It is because the movie was set in the 30s, or was it the 40s? I can never remember that. Anyway, the classical, you know, detective tale, and, you know, the femme fatale who comes, and, you know, the cops and stuff like that, that worked in that era, because this movie takes place in, you know, present day, and that made the whole story feel so very, very antiquated. So I thought that this movie could have benefited from taking place in a different, you know, time period. Make it in the 60s, or make it in the 70s, or maybe the 80s, so you can have, you know, lots of, you know, 80s hits on the soundtrack or something like that. But having it taken place in, you know, modern time did not work for this movie. It's not a terrible movie, but it's not a movie that I would recommend, or I ever have the, you know, urge to ever rewatch. But it was not as bad as I thought it was. There is, you know, the occasions where a line delivers, and sometimes Melissa McCarthy is fun, but it is a movie where she basically phones this one in, and all the really funny jokes that she normally can do are not present in this movie. I give the Happytime Murders 37 points. It is a decent movie, and I appreciate, you know, the puppet work that they do, and at least the puppet looked kind of nice, and at least it was old school puppets, and at least, you know, this wasn't some kind of, you know, CGI atrocities or something like that. The movie was a little bleh. The thing is that they wanted to shock you with the fact, you know, that, you know, Jim Henson's son is, you know, making fucking drug-taking and swearing puppets. But the fact is that they only went halfway with, you know, the shock factor, and they didn't do enough with the gross out thing to, you know, get a reaction from it. It was sort of, well, they're there, and you get so used to the puppets after a while that it doesn't become that shocking or that unusual anymore. You just kind of get used to them, and I think that is the worst thing about this movie. It's just a gimmick movie, and when a gimmick has run its course, there's really nothing left under the hood, so this was not really for me. The story isn't bad, and if they could have populated this movie with some more interesting or fascinating characters, I think this movie could have been better than it ended up being. So what do you think about the Happytime Murders? Comment below, and I'll see you next time for Will So-and-so reviewing, well, such and such. Thank you for watching. Thank you very much.